All right, we are back talking NFL and college football with Marc Lawrence, Playbook Experts. That's the new YouTube channel. You got to check that out. Of course, playbooksports.com as well. Marc, how you doing?
I'm doing just terrific, Greg. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I can't wait for that college football bowl newsletter to come out.
Bowl guide. We'll call it the bowl guide.
Bowl, yeah, because a newsletter is like a couple of pages. The guide, that's a lot more than that.
Yes, it is. It's a lot thicker and a lot more information.
And that's why the first thing I do is I just put together, all right, I put all the games together, the odds and such, and I get my general thinking. But there's two things now that you have to do, or at least that I have to do. One is I got to wait for the bowl guide to come out so I can check all the information, because obviously it helps me that I don't have to go ahead and do all that legwork. I let you guys do it for me.
Okay.
And besides, you're going to find out a whole lot more than I'm going to be able to find out on my own anyway. But then now with the transfer portal, and of course the NFL draft looming, we're already seeing just all sorts of crazy odd swings, and it's just, it used to be where you could have a pretty good idea if we did like a college football bowl preview show for the entire bowls schedule. You can fairly think that, okay, yeah, this is everything that I've talked about, and all the games are going to be pretty much handicapped the way that they should be 3 weeks before the game played. Not anymore. Now it's like you better be lucky that if you preview a college football bowl game, you should do it 24 hours before the game starts, just so you know who's playing and who's not.
It's sort of like, it reminds me, Greg, when I was a young kid in school, I used to sell scorecards for the Cleveland Indians at the stadium after the games. I'd make my extra $1 or $2 or $3 and get to watch the games for free. So that was the real big bonus for me. But I used to sell the scorecards and tell the people, you can't tell the players without a scorecard. It's exactly what the bowls are right now. You can't tell the teams without a scorecard, without a bowl guide. It's practically impossible, like you mentioned, with this transfer portals, the head coaching information that's going on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that after we put the bowl guide out that it's not going to change. It's going to continue changing, but at least we've got a step up on it anyway before we begin our search.
Well, but still, even the thing about the bowl, your bowl guide, though, which is important to note, is that is still something that really doesn't change, because that's data.
Yes,
there's a lot of data that really gives you all the key history notes. Whether, hey, how does a conference do, or how has a conference done lately? How has the MAC done? Because I remember a couple of years ago they were so bad. They were like, if you could be rest assured that you would always pick against the MAC team. I know that changed a little bit the last couple of years, but that kind of stuff, that's data. That's not changing anytime soon. But it's the other stuff outside of that, of course, that we just talked about, just the human factor. That
the head coaches and how they do, how teams respond, depending upon what they come into the game off of. Were they upset as a favorite? Are they off 2 or 3 losses in a row? Those types of things. And that's the kind of stuff that we can put into that well-oiled machine and at least get us ready for the bowl games.
A few things, and again, we'll be talking about, because let's see, the first bowl game is next Friday, so we'll be on the air next Thursday, so we'll be able to talk about the 2 games that are next Friday. The big games. But I'm really happy, and I criticize the bowl system a lot, and they deserve to get criticized a lot. But somebody made the smart decision, and I'm assuming it happened this year, this offseason, to place the Conference USA champion against the Sun Belt champion. Because we get Troy against UTSA.
That's where a lot of that migration is happening next year, with all those 2 conferences melding in a sense. So it ends up, I guess, acquainting themselves a little bit, if you will, creates some bragging rights, for some of the teams that are making the changeover. So it'll end up being interesting. And, the fact of the matter is, don't quiz me on which team is in which conference. With all this talk going on right now, I have to at least open up my database to find
it. That's true. Yeah. But, I mean, last year, the Sun Belt champ, Louisiana Lafayette, played like the runner-up or the third-place team from the Conference USA, Middle Tennessee State. That made no sense whatsoever. It just destroyed, even though Lafayette won easy, It's just unfair to their great season to put them up against a non-champion from the same group of 5 you're in. It was like a lack of respect. That's why I'm glad this time around we get 2 conference champions facing each other.
Really nice. That's exactly the way it should be, and it'll also get everybody ready for the new college football playoff.
Oh, can't wait.
Playoff format, which we'll see a couple of group of 5 teams in there. I would say at least 2. I would hope at least 2. Maybe might be just the one again because the big boys will puff their chest.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But if they're good enough, I mean, maybe we'll see 2 teams.
You might get one. Yeah, might get a second one.
Right.
And I said this on with I might have said it, and because Matt Schaff, who does the fantasy segment that we're gonna have a little bit later on, keeping in mind that the fantasy segment is like 90% talking NFL injuries. So if you want to know about all the injuries that are taking place this week, including tonight with the Raiders and the Rams, Matt and I are going to talk about that. So you want to stay tuned for that. That's coming up before we talk about the primetime games. But the other thing is that we were talking about it, and it's true. And I'm going to say this a lot between now and the year before the playoffs start, the 12-team playoff. I don't believe that most fans or maybe even most people in the industry of college football, except the really smart ones, understand how big the college football playoff format's going to be to the sport. It's going to be tremendous. The excitement of 12 teams, and you play, you win, you move. Hey, who's going to play? You're going to have the brackets. It's going to be a tremendous thing for the sport. Tremendous. The fans are going to go nuts for it.
It's going to be. They won't need a PR machine. It's going to be a self-made PR machine. They're going to everything that's going to happen. It's all going to be the talk on the radio, the papers, everything you read and you talk about. And it also sort of disses everybody that was sort of, I want to say, old school or set in their ways about don't make a change. This 4-team format is okay. And, yeah, come on, man. Let's ask them after next year and see exactly.
Yeah. All right. Now, I do want to run through. There's just some quick observations on the lines. So let me see here. I'm surprised that BYU is a small dog to SMU.
Well, I guess maybe, at the beginning of the season, I would not have anticipated that. But SMU garnered a lot of respect as the season wore on, and BYU sort of maybe lost a little bit of their power ranking as the season went on, and maybe because of that merge of the way the seasons went for those 2 football teams, that's the reason. But I can't really, as I'm sitting here talking with you right now, tell you which side I'm going to get to the game because I haven't run them through the machine yet. I'm still. That's my next project when I get done with you. We're going to input everything into that machine and find out exactly whether or not that line is right or wrong.
Yeah, I just think when they beat Boise, that kind of, and they haven't lost over the last few games, they right the ship again. Oregon State is like an 11-point favorite over Florida. That is obviously because Richardson, the quarterback from Florida, has decided to declare for the NFL draft. No reason for anybody to see more film on that guy.
No.
I mean, he's going to be the most volatile quarterback prospect in this year's draft because it's all going to be about projection. Oh, he's so big. He's got such a strong arm. But his accuracy is awful. And they're going to be Josh Allen comparisons. I know it. They're going to say, but Josh Allen had a low accuracy percentage. And it's only going to take one general manager to go, he's the next Josh Allen. I'm taking him.
Well, that might be a mistake. At least the team that drafts him is going to have to kind of do a Green Bay sort of thing where they need to let the kid develop behind a quarterback and behind the right quarterback, too, behind the right coach. And that's possible. It could happen. We're going to see an end result for Jordan Love from Green Bay that I think is going to end up being like, wow, now I understand why they took the kid. You know what I mean?
Because he wasn't ready either. He
wasn't.
And the thing is if Rodgers wasn't there, he probably would have started him, and he would have looked awful.
He'd have been thrown to the wolves. Exactly right. And who knows what it would have done to his psyche.
Possibly,
doing something like that. So the right team needs to draft him, and if the right team gets him and then works him properly, he could end up being a pretty good NFL football quarterback.
Possible. Sure.
But he'll be a reach. if he goes anywhere inside of the first half of the first round of the draft.
And then in the Boca Raton Bowl, Liberty is an underdog to Toledo. And I know Toledo's okay, but it's a MAC team. But Liberty, look, we don't know what's going to go on there with Hugh Freeze, not the coach, because we saw what happened when he wasn't even the head coach at Auburn yet, but everybody knew he was going to be the head coach officially of Auburn when you turned on the New Mexico State Liberty game. And you saw the score of that game. You knew what was going on. There was no other excuse for it.
No. Well, there was no other excuse for the other two games before that either. That football team really stunk up the joint the last three games, did Liberty. And it might well have been a feeling amongst the team that they got word that he was going to be leaving maybe even as early as a month before all that. And the players just sort of disappeared on him. It was really not the way to go out for sure. I mean, that was an ugly mess. When you lose to New Mexico State, my goodness.
Blown out.
Blown out, yeah.
Yes.
As a whopping 20-point favorite, and then
lose by 20. Yeah.
Or lose by 20, and then that allows New Mexico State to make a bowl game on top of it. It's like, wow,
yeah,
sort of a disgrace. It makes it really difficult to handicap Liberty because you don't know
exactly.
I don't know yet who's coaching that football team. I don't know if
probably interim. Oh yeah, because it's too early when.
Well, they made a hire. They made a big hire.
Well, Jamie Shadwell.
Yes. Okay.
But there's no way he's going to coach the team. It'll be an interim guy. It'll be an assistant coach, I'm sure.
Now, I would love to see Jamie Chadwell say to his football team, guys, I want to stick around here, and I want to send us all out a winner, and we're gonna coach you up, and we're gonna go out a winner. I would love to see that. Okay, you're not going to see it, but I would love to see that because his allegiance now is to Liberty as opposed to Coastal Carolina.
Well, that's the other game because as a 3-1 money line play, you say to yourself, well, if you know, let's just say if you knew that they were going to play just like they were playing all season, the last 3 years with Chadwell as the head coach, oh, this is a great risk, great money line risk. But look what just happened in the game against Troy. Once again, you knew that he was gone when Troy was obliterating Coastal Carolina. I was watching the game and you go, what is going on here? You knew what was going on. And that's with Grayson McCall back.
On top of it, yes.
So exactly. It might be still a little bit too risky. I'll tell you right now, believe it or not, my early top play, I'm going to give you a nice little obscure one.
I'll also give you a get out of jail card for in case something happens between now and then, okay?
Okay. Right. Duke.
There you go.
Over Central Florida in the Military Bowl. It's basically a pick 'em.
Very well coached football team, Duke is.
Yeah.
Very well coached.
I like that there's no points, win the game, and I just think they've had such a good season that I don't think Central Florida I don't even know what they're going to be up for. Oh, we got to play Duke. We lost the AAC championship opportunity. I don't really know how, but Duke, I could see them being inspired and hey, this is good for us. So that's why I kind of like Duke in that one.
Well, it sort of fits that axiom that we talk about a lot, Greg, and that one of the first checkpoints when you're looking at the College Bowl cards is to look at teams that are thrilled to be in the game they're in.
Yep.
Against an opponent that is disappointed to be in the game they're in. And I think Duke checks both of those boxes in that game.
Here's another one. Oregon is a 12-point favorite, or now a 14-point favorite over North Carolina because nobody has any idea what's going on here with North Carolina because all of a sudden May, their quarterback, is transferring, which again, it's just why? Why is he transferring? It blows. Unless there's something that went on with his initial recruiting, it just maybe he's thinking, yeah, I don't want to come back to this. I know I'm really good. I want to go to, because if he's transferring way up. He's transferring maybe to an SEC school. Maybe he'll go to Alabama, Georgia. There's no way he's transferring for anything less than something like that.
Yeah, with Stetson Bennett leaving Georgia, it might end up being a nice little pathway for him.
Imagine that. Great for college football. Georgia gets Drake May.
There you go. But yeah, I also see something maybe going on, a little smoke, if you will, coming out of North Carolina, where he's not the only one leaving the program.
Yeah, it's
Now,
true. Yeah.
I'm wondering if the players, maybe there's a little bit of a separation between them and Mac Brown. Uh, all of a sudden, it's too many players that are doing this here right now, all of a sudden. And unless they have these NIL agreements in place to go somewhere else and do just that, it seems a little bit queer that this many players from North Carolina are upping and deciding to go.
Maybe.
And, yeah, and leaving this team, contemplating not even having enough players to play in this bowl game.
That's it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Here's one that I like as an early upset because of the line. I'm getting almost 2-1 with Washington against Texas in the
I
Alamo Bowl.
love, I love that side of the football game. Again, I'm saying I love that side before I get
Before
into
you
my.
look at it, yeah, that's okay.
But just from what we talked about all season long, the makeup of the teams and everything, I love this matchup here. You've got an overrated name and reputation team in Texas with Steve Sarkisian, who finds ways to lose games rather than win games.
Yeah,
You've got a really well-coached team in Washington and Kalen DeBoer and a terrific quarterback. The question is he going to be there for
yeah.
Washington?
From what I've
Yep.
heard,
Okay, well, if he is, then I think we've got everything you want for a nice, good side in a bowl game. And dogging up to Texas is just what the doctor ordered.
yeah, because if anything were to happen to him, that line would go from like 5 to 10.
Yes.
But yeah, so far I've heard no reason to think that Penix won't be there. South Carolina, now they lost their offensive coordinator who took the job at Nebraska. I found that out because I interviewed Steve Marek from Rivals earlier today. That show is available on the channel. You can check that out for you Husker fans. So he's a new offensive coordinator at Nebraska now. But I only mention that too because South Carolina, Notre Dame, 3-point Notre Dame, and South Carolina had those two awesome wins at the end of the season. And Tennessee and Clemson, and their offense just went crazy with Rattler. But it was interesting because Steve pointed out that there were some people wondering whether, because he was being heavily criticized the entire year, the coordinator, but they all of a sudden exploded the last couple of games, and people were wondering, well, but was he really calling the plays at the end of the game? And maybe that's the reason that they all of a sudden exploded offensively because he wasn't calling the plays anymore. I doubt that. To me, I think that's probably people who hated the guy and are just upset now that he's leaving after he finally produced. But just keep an eye on that because if I don't believe, because look, you do have to wonder how the offense might go with their coordinator gone after those really big games. But I think I'd be willing to take a chance on that because it's only the coordinator, the head coach is still there, the quarterback is still there, and how can you not be impressed with the way South Carolina ended their season? And they're going to want to kind of put a final stamp on the season, not just win those two, but let's win 3 in a row to end the season and really turn a corner for next season.
What you would like to know, Greg, is if the quarterback coach for that program is maybe going to
good point. Yep.
Because if he does, that turnover is not that mammoth,
Yep.
not that big of a gap. So, if it ends up being that case, I don't think this football team will miss a beat. I really don't.
I was a little bit surprised to see Wyoming as a dog to Ohio without their MAC championship quarterback, their all MAC quarterback, who we saw in the MAC championship game how much they missed him. To me, that's a lack of respect for Wyoming that they're an underdog to Ohio without their top quarterback.
Well, Ohio's being priced a lot on their record and the way they closed the season. I know they didn't look all that impressive in the Toledo game. You can say that, well, they held Toledo to 16 points, which
they
is
also
good.
had quarterback problems.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm in agreement here. I think this is a much better team in Wyoming than it is in Ohio University, who is being priced on their body of work to end the football season. Although they came up short, and they came up short because their quarterback wasn't there.
Look, I said when Milton played against Vanderbilt, I want to see him produce. I don't want to keep hearing it. Well, he produced. That was one of the big, crazy performance game results of the entire final regular season. Honestly, if I would have saw the score, I actually would have believed it was Vanderbilt. I actually would have believed Tennessee had just given up. Where are we going? We don't care about the game. Milton stinks. And Vandy had just won 2 straight. How do you go from winning 2 straight in that situation? Now you have bowl eligibility on the line and you lose 49-0 to a team playing for nothing. But I think the point is that that's why I think Tennessee's a really good upset play. because
Well, they could well be.
they're 2-1 money line.
Wow, that's a big number here. Huge number, in fact. And the Vanderbilt play, they were in off those big, huge double-digit
Yeah.
underdog wins. It was a rival, an in-state rival, like you say, to become bowl eligible. Everything was there. All the ingredients were on the table for Vanderbilt, and they just
Biggest
laid
egg
an
of the
egg.
season. Yeah.
In more ways than one, they laid an egg. Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So anyway, I like that one because nobody's impressed by Clemson just because they routed North Carolina. I mean, come on. So now the Kentucky was a 2-point favorite. Now Iowa was a 1-point favorite. So are we only getting 3 points from Levis? I mean, is that all he deserves is 3 points?
Well, he's not going to be there, so
Yeah,
that's
so 3 points. I mean,
yeah.
come on. I thought this guy's like a first-round draft pick quarterback, and I'm only gonna. I mean, I'm Iowa. I only have to give a point. I was a 2-point dog. I'll take that every day of the week. I mean, come
Well,
on.
I was down to backup quarterback here as well. I think the biggest story inside this football game is the over/under total in the game,
Oh yeah,
31 and a half
that's
points. I mean,
incredible. That's
yeah, what
almost Army Navy.
it almost is. What's going to be higher, the temperature or the over/under total in the football game?
Unreal. That's
Uh,
not a game. That game. But there ought to be another game on when that one's
yes,
going on. Alabama aren't now is. I haven't heard anything. Bryce Young. I didn't hear Bryce Young not playing.
I've not heard a word that way.
Are
No.
they guessing Bryce Young's not playing? Because the line went from 5.5 to 3.5. Why is everybody betting against Alabama when
Well,
Bryce Young is still playing?
it may be more than just Bryce Young. It may be Anderson. We don't know. I
Sure.
mean, we still don't know. We haven't got through that transfer portal yet. Hear the news of all that, and it sounds as if some of these Alabama players are not going to be playing here.
Yeah, I can definitely see Anderson going. Yeah, I'm going to the NFL.
Right.
I'm not even. So I could see that. So yeah, if they have and I got to imagine that's the only reason. Only reason. There's got to be 15 Alabama players that are saying we're not playing.
Yeah, and it's not like they're in the college football playoff either. So they're
No
not.
incentive.
No, none whatsoever. I mean, in fact, it's a letdown game
Yeah,
for
it's
a
Kansas
letdown
State.
game.
This is a big opportunity. It's Alabama, baby.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So, and then let's see if there's any. I also like Illinois. They're about a 1 or 2 point dog to Mississippi State. I just think that they've had such a good year, and I know they were disappointed not to get to the championship game, but this is still kind of like, to me, this is like the way for them to cement a really good season.
Well, I think it's going to be a defensive struggle here. We know all about Illinois, how good they are defensively. They can sometimes not show up offensively. Mississippi State can turn the screws up defensively in games like this. So I'm going to probably lean a little bit more toward the under total in the game. I don't know exactly what it is as we're talking right now, but I think it's got the makeup of being just that, a low scoring contest.
I want to see what the situation is with Chase Brown too, obviously, because he might say I'm not playing. Even though I would think maybe this is a game you would want him to play, you would think maybe he'd play because they've had such a special season, and he's a big part of that. And if he doesn't play in the bowl game, I would be a little bit surprised if he didn't play in that game.
That's why it's going to be so imperative to make sure that you check every team to find out what status you can learn about every team, every quarterback, every key person on the football team. We're sitting here talking about it, waffling, if you will, because of some of these players here, and they're going to make a huge difference.
Yep.
And like you said before, you can probably tell just by reading the line movements in these games of which players are or are not going to be playing for these teams.
And by the way, that's its January 2nd game, so a long way to figure that one out. Definitely don't be putting any early parlays on that game without knowing what's going on. LSU is now a 10-point favorite over Purdue. Brom going from Purdue, isn't that something? He's going from a Big Ten team to an ACC team, but we know why. He's going back to his roots at Louisville.
And he's also going back for a lot more money. I can assure you that.
That's definitely part of it, yes. So good for him.
Yeah, they've been after him for a long time. He kept denying everything, but I think he feels probably that he did all he can do with Purdue. You got him to the Big Ten championship game.
Agreed.
With a gutty performance this year. So if it's where he wants to be, he wants to hang his hat in Louisville. God bless him all the more for him. I think he'll do a good job with the program. Yes.
I mean, he has to worry about Clemson. That's it.
Exactly.
All right. Here's another game I was surprised about the line, but I know one thing, and that's Caleb Williams is playing because he's not eligible for the draft. How on earth is USC only a 2-point favorite against Tulane?
It appears to be small. There's no question about that. We talked a little bit about in our podcast yesterday about our surprise and disappointing teams, and I had Tulane as my number one surprise team
Oh,
in all
yeah.
football this
I
year.
love Tulane. We both love Tulane. So this is not a mark on Tulane. I would have wished to have bet on Tulane. I figured they'd be a 7 or 8-point dog. Maybe they'd be plus 250 on the money line. I didn't expect them to be a 2-point dog.
Yeah, it does look short, and sometimes you have to maybe draw a line and ask yourself, am I reading the line right? Is there something that I'm not aware of in this game?
Yeah.
But I've learned many, many times, and I learned the hard way. Don't second guess the odds
Yeah,
maker.
there's a reason.
Yeah, it's exactly the right. There's a reason. So what you do is you handicap the game for what it is. Okay, does this Tulane football team warrant taking 2 points, and can they handle the 2 points against this caliber of a football team? That's what you have to ask yourself. Not question about the line. Although you feel like you were ready to play Tulane, and you say you're ready to take a touchdown, and now you're getting less than a field goal. That makes it a little bit more difficult for sure.
Yeah, because I was figuring, well, hey, this is gonna be a good money line play. To take
Right.
advantage, but now that's through the window. All right, so finally the playoff games. Not surprised about Michigan's line. I kind of felt that was about on the mark. I was surprised though with the Georgia line, and I know the guys on ESPN, they were all guessed the line themselves, and they were all pretty similar. But I thought Georgia would be a double-digit favorite.
Well, I don't think they should be personally. Okay, and my reservations about them is that you don't repeat in the college football playoff. No one ever has. So they're going to be targeted. Defending champions, number one team in all season, most of all season long, coming into this particular matchup here, and you're going to get a lot of public money on the Georgia Bulldogs here as well. So I think that's what the odds makers see in this. They see that this road's not going to be as easy for the Georgia Bulldogs, if not this football game, the second game after this, if they do handle
Oh,
and
and I
win.
agree.
Yeah,
I mean, I haven't been overly impressed with what I've seen from Georgia this year,
no,
and they haven't really played. They had the one impressive game, and that was Tennessee.
last
And
game was more dominant for sure.
yeah, but there's so many other, looking at them, and you're like, yeah, but I mean, maybe they would have been better off losing a game like they did last year. Now it's too late. Now if they
Yep.
lose, it's over. So
Yep.
yeah, so the line has no reason, nothing to mean that I don't think Ohio State has a chance to beat him, because I do. Anything could happen in that game
Well, you're going to read a lot about some really impressive Ohio State numbers in this game as underdogs.
as
I mean,
underdogs. Even though a lot of it was with Urban Meyer, though, wasn't it?
well, there's still, Ryan Day has still held up his end of the
As
bargain.
a dog, okay.
Yes, he has. I'm talking like 13-1 numbers. Okay, we're going to see some Ohio State in some waters that are unbelievable, but it's also for a reason. There's no question about that. And the thing that I talked about a little bit also is the fact that, truth be known, Ohio State really kind of sputtered out down the stretch. They got out-yarded in 4 of the last 5 football.
Yeah.
So they weren't, they're not hitting on all cylinders. Maybe they're a football team that feels blessed and reprieved.
I think so.
Yeah.
They got nothing to lose now.
Exactly right.
Yes.
They're playing with house money, is what they're doing.
Now here's a strange thing. So Ohio State is plus 220 on the Georgia money line, but I believe I've seen that they're like plus 275, 300 to win the championship. So I just want to let everybody know that if you're thinking about Ohio State winning the championship, then screw that. Just take the money line to beat Georgia. I wouldn't go for an extra point.
Well, you have to win an extra game, is what you have to do also.
Yeah. So why risk that when you
For the
can just
same
take
price.
220 on the Georgia game?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because if they're gonna win the championship, they're gonna have to knock Georgia down, and most likely get past Michigan, which they'll have a big incentive chip on their shoulder to do just that.
And they'll be favored in that game.
Yeah, that game will be really in the pickish range is what it'll be.
Yeah.
It depends upon how Michigan fares and
That's
how
true. Against
how they
TCU.
look.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
And then the Heisman. You couldn't have drawn up a better
Promotional film.
we've been pushing this Duggan for Heisman for like half the season, and then we said last week, hey, why should it be over yet? What if he loses? What if Caleb Williams loses? And what does he do? Not only does he lose, and I don't want to hear anything about his injury. Oh, too bad you got hurt. You know what? Blake Corum got hurt, and they didn't even invite him to the Heisman ceremony. So right. I don't want to hear you got hurt. Boo-hoo. And then Duggan goes out and pulls out because his stupid running back fumbles the football at the goal line. Would have pulled off one of the most miraculous performances ever by a quarterback in a college football championship game. And the odds don't move at all for the Heisman. What's going on here? I don't understand it.
The kid gets no love at all. He gets no love at all. You know, you watch him throw the ball. He looks like he's undersized and, you know, doesn't belong on the field, but he gets the job done, man. I mean, that last drive when he marched down the field and rushed for 85 of those yards.
That was a Heisman moment.
Absolutely. You know, we had Kansas State in the game, and all I'm saying to myself is, come on, Kleiman, put somebody on this guy. Have somebody focus on this guy. You know this guy's going to take.
You know he's going to run when he has the chance to run. Yeah,
exactly. Zero in on him.
Yes, you know what I mean?
Unbelievable. But you know, tip of the hat to him. That was one of the most memorable performances I've seen for sure, at least in a conference championship game.
Well, just remember these close games this year that he had to pull out: Kansas, Oklahoma State. He had the comeback against Kansas State. They had the late comeback against West Virginia, even though it was 10. That all happened late. And then, of course, the Texas game, the Baylor fourth quarter, last 2-minute touchdown comeback, and then the championship game. And what happened with Caleb Williams? Well, Caleb Williams' games, I got to do a video on this. Caleb Williams' games this season, he had, the Oregon State game, which was a close game, and he had a touchdown winning drive there. So good for you, but you only scored 17 points anyway, so you get little credit for that. And you lost the close game to Utah, and you won the close blowout against the UCLA defense that couldn't stop anybody. That's it. There's no Heisman, great moments. There's no, wow, what a job he did. Nothing. It's just because they put up all sorts of big numbers, and he had this great touchdown to interception ratio, where all the other guy did was just will his team to the Big 12 championship game when he began the season as a backup.
Williams was never really, honestly, ever in the talk the first half of the football. No, he just kind of came out of nowhere by default, really.
Everybody lost. Everybody was losing.
Exactly.
Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. So
the question becomes, what if TCU wins that football game against Kansas State? Okay, they remain undefeated. He has to be the co-favorite to win the Heisman Trophy.
You know what? I don't know how they could, but he didn't do anything wrong. It was the running back that fumbled.
No, he didn't.
They should know that. They should understand that. He should already have gotten credit for that, and they gave him no credit. 0. The odds are still the same. Nothing. Now, maybe the odds are wrong. I have no idea. I doubt it, even though they said that there's a lot of voters who didn't cast their votes yet. There's no other explanation that I can think of. Because if you didn't cast your vote yet, what were you looking at last Saturday that leads you to believe that Caleb Williams should win the Heisman over Duggan?
I don't get it either. It's his name and reputation in the schools. You had a team in TCU as a kind of an upstart team out of the Big 12 conference against Southern Cal, you know, the football factory, if you will, Lincoln Riley and all those transfers going over via the transfer portal over to Southern Cal. Yep. So, you know, it's sort of maybe a justification for Southern Cal, but I'm not buying it either. I think the wrong guy is favored here.
And really, shame, shame, shame on the Heisman committee by not inviting Blake Corum to the Heisman ceremony. So Blake Corum, I don't think there's any question now that if he had stayed healthy, he would win the Heisman because everybody else was failing. And he was right there. He was ahead of Caleb Williams for like all season. But
yes, he was.
Quarterbacks lost. They got moved aside. Blake Corum got hurt, moved aside. That's why Caleb Williams got moved up. So he misses the last couple of games, 2 games. And that's too much for the Heisman committee. That Stetson Bennett gets to the Heisman. Stetson Bennett is a Heisman finalist. What are we doing here? Seriously. Put Stetson Bennett on TCU. We'll see how many games they lose.
Well, Bennett barely won the starting job last year. Who was the kid, the transfer? Who was the quarterback?
Oh, the guy from, the guy who transferred. Where did he transfer this year? Yeah, he's transferred like 5 schools in like 3 years. I forget his name.
He just entered the transfer portal again.
Yeah, I'm sure he is.
I mean,
yeah. It's terrible. Yeah, but look, he's come up clutch when he's had to. He's done a good job. He won the national championship. But look, he's got a great team around him that helps. He's a nice little player. But how on earth does Stetson Bennett get to the Heisman and you don't invite Blake Corum? What message does that send that the guy gets hurt, misses 2 games, and he can't go to the Heisman ceremony?
Well, in truth be known, it really doesn't matter because neither of them were.
No, it doesn't
either, right? No. So it's just
Caleb
the person that should have been there. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, let's round this out by just running through some of these NFL games. By the way, tonight's game, and I want to run through some really cool trends, and all these trends are going to be from right here in the magazine. If you missed out on this magazine, don't worry, because the 2023 edition hasn't even been written up yet. So you have a lot of time to save your money and to figure out what do you have to do in order to get the guide for next season and take advantage of these types of trends. The LA Rams and Las Vegas. Now, this is strictly regarding the trends. I'm picking the Rams as a 3-star play today. I don't care who the quarterback is. Okay, I don't care if Baker Mayfield suits up for the Rams. Why? Because the Raiders are 0-17 against the spread in their last 17 games as a non-division favorite when they take on an opponent off back-to-back straight-up losses. And they're 0-4 this year in the same trend line.
And they're laying points, yes.
And they're laying 6-7 now, 6.5, 7. Plus, they are 1-11-1 in their last 13 as a road favorite. And they're 0-3 this year in that spot. Plus,
go ahead.
Don't speak so fast.
Yep, go ahead.
2-18 in their last 20 when they're on the road off back-to-back straight-up wins.
Oh.
What are we doing here? You got to take the Rams.
Well, the other side of this equation is we all know what the Rams situation is. They're beat up. They're humbled with injuries. But here comes Baker Mayfield, and what a nice little placebo he could be here in a game like this. Okay.
Oh boy, yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Anyway, so that's all it's on. Those trends are just way too one-sided for me not to take the Rams. Keep in mind, no Lamar Jackson for Baltimore. I don't know how in the world Denver blew that game last week, by the way. They're winning the game, what was it? 9-3 until like 7 minutes left in the game. They give up 3 points in 53 minutes. And they give up a touchdown drive, a 95-yard touchdown drive with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. And the funny thing is, as soon as Baltimore got a couple of first downs, you knew they were going to score. That's the season Denver is having. You knew that somehow Baltimore was going to, and you could see it on the scoreboard. It was 9-3. You just knew Baltimore was going to win 10-9 because that is the third. They have had 3 overtime losses and 2 one-point losses this season, Denver.
Well, the stat that staggered me, it was the fact that the role that Baltimore was in had won 206 times in a row until Baltimore blew it again. And basically it was about a team that had 2 or more turnovers, forced no turnovers, and held their opponent to 10 or fewer points.
Oh, so they blew that, you mean?
They blew that, exactly.
206 game?
Yes.
Wow.
206 in a row. So
that makes the Denver fans feel even better.
Oh, it sure does. It makes them want to go out and re-sign Josh McDaniels.
Yeah. Anyway, so Lamar Jackson not playing at Pittsburgh, but
not McDaniels.
I mean Jackson, but The dog in the series is 8-0-1 in the last 9 games. That's kind of why I'm staying away, especially when Baltimore is 12-2 as a division dog in their last 7 years and 16-4 in the last 20 as dogs, including 2-0 this year. Now, I know Tyler Huntley was probably not in any of those games, maybe one, but those are some really heavy trends siding with taking Baltimore, which is why I'm just not going to touch the game.
Well, if I had to get there, I would go to Denver if for no other reason because of their defense.
You mean Baltimore against Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Baltimore against Pittsburgh. Yes, I'm sorry.
Baltimore. Yeah, Patrick Queen may or may not play, but they do have a really good defense, which is the exact reason why I would stay away from it.
I think it's a mess, personally. I do. You're talking about Pittsburgh, T.J. Watt being back.
Yep.
How improved they are, how inspired they are, trying to win for Mike Tomlin to avoid that first ever losing football season here coming into this football game. I don't know if I want Baltimore with Huntley. I know Huntley's played adequately, but I don't know if I want Baltimore in this football game.
That's the major thing that scares me is that, there's such a good dog team, Baltimore. The dog in the series is awesome. As a matter of fact, the dog has won 6 of the last 9 straight out in the series. But Pittsburgh has beaten Baltimore 4 straight. So they've had 2 straight season sweeps against Baltimore. 3 of those were as dogs. They won the game outright as dogs. But there is one trend working against Baltimore. They're just 2-14 against the spread in their last 16 after they allow less than 10 points. And they're 0-1 in that spot this year.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the series that has finished more on 3 points than any other series in the National Football League. When these two teams lock horns, it's a 3-point football game.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, if that comes into play here, you can help maybe make your decision if that helps any at all.
Cleveland, Cincinnati. So your Brownies get Deshaun Watson. What'd you think about his performance?
Well, it was expected. First game in 700 days. There was going to be rust there. He was also probably nervous as all get out, and it showed. I mean, sometimes he looked good, but some of the other times he looked terrible, throwing the ball into the ground and not taking off and running when he should have taken off and run because he's got all the ability in the world to be a great running quarterback. But I think it's going to also be the perfect elixir for him and the Browns for preparing for this football game. They got that out of the way.
Yeah, and they won the game. And at least it wasn't a whole game that he needed. He just needed a half.
Exactly right. So, that's under their belt. Now you've got a Cleveland Brown football team taking on Cincinnati, and you can say what you want, but Cincinnati cannot be as up for this football game as they were for Kansas City last week. I know it's the Browns. I know it's division. I know it's revenge for Cincinnati and all those good things. And people keep talking about how the importance of the need for Cincinnati in the football game.
It's a much bigger need for Cleveland. Yeah.
Unbelievably bigger need for Cleveland. Cincinnati can lose this game, and they'll be 1 game behind Baltimore, who they'll play the last game of the season. They win that game, and then it's theirs.
Yeah.
So this is not must win by any means for the Cincinnati.
Oh, they're going to the playoffs. There's no doubt they're a playoff team.
Right.
Cleveland, if they win the game, at least they may put themselves in a position to only be a game back of the playoff spot.
Yeah, Cleveland's playing for a wild card berth. Cincinnati's trying to win the division. Is basically what's happening here. I think this is a great spot for the Cleveland Browns here this particular week. You've got a coach here that has done nothing but beat Cincinnati like a drum. You take a look at Joe Burrow's record in division games. It just flat out stinks. He does all of his work outside the division. I think the pressure's all on Cincinnati in this football game. Yeah. I got to grab the points of the Browns in this football contest.
All right, Jets and Buffalo. I had to take the Jets because it was 10 points. I think that shows a little lack of respect. But while saying that, part of the reason that helped me put that was the trend. Buffalo 4-16 in their last 20 off a double-digit win when they're taking on a division opponent off a straight-up ATS loss. And ironically, they're 0-1 in that spot this year. And that's when they played the Jets. So now they're in that spot again.
Again, nice.
With the Jets.
We'll take it.
So that's why I'm taking the 10 points in that spot. I will tell you, because you haven't heard it from me directly, but I I am probably the most outspoken realist when it comes to Mike White from any Jet fan or writer, because I was totally unimpressed with Mike White last week. I believe the media in New York is trying to stir something up because it's a top draft pick and they're kissing Mike White's butt and they want controversy. And I said it after my reaction video. I said in my post game, I know what the media is going to say. They're going to talk about what a great game Mike White played. And sure enough, that's exactly what they did. But when you look at the numbers, his quarterback rating in the game was 58. He had no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. They kept getting into the red zone. He kept missing. Every time there were chances, did nothing. Last 4 passes of the game, all incomplete. Missed a wide open Garrett Wilson for an 80-yard touchdown, completely overthrows him. Did he play okay for a quarterback that hasn't played a lot in that situation? Yes, he played okay. He was fine. But they are making this guy out to be some sort of savior. And it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. If he would have played okay, they would have won that football game. I mean, the Detroit Lions are favored against the Vikings this week. That shows you how much Vegas respects the Vikings. So come on. I'm sorry, but this isn't to say that I want Zach Wilson starting. It's just that the media is getting so carried away with this guy. It's just, we'll find out. Buffalo Bills, big game. Let's see what you can do.
Well, I think to take the onus off of Mike White on this football game, it's the Jets defense. If they're going to win the game, it's going to be.
They got to play better. Absolutely. They were awful last week.
Well, they were, but what they happen to be is one of only 2 teams in the league that have held 8 opponents to less than 300 yards this year. Only them in San Francisco. So they can rely on a defense there.
Yep.
And there's also a Buffalo football team. If you remember, Greg, at the beginning of the season, they were the number 1 ranked defense in all of the National Football League through the first 6 weeks of the season. They're ranked number 10 right now coming into this game.
Yeah, they've had injuries, yeah.
Yep, are the Bills. So, they're sliding defensively that way in this contest. You look at the series trends here. I mean, the last 7 times the Jets have played Buffalo when the Bills are up back-to-back wins, the Jets have won and covered 6 of those 7 football games. 10 points is just far too many points. I realize it's ugly revenge for Buffalo. They lost it laying 10 up in New York. They're laying 10 here in this football contest here. But you're going to get 100% of everything the Jets have got in this football game here. I've got to grab the double digits with New York.
And they're probably one of the better bargains as far as the money line is concerned as well. Even though I still think it's going to be improbable that they sweep the Bills, you're getting plus 350 on the money line from a team who beat that team just a few weeks ago. So, Again, a little lack of respect there. Jacksonville, Tennessee, they're going to be playing this week after firing their general manager. Good for them. They're not waiting until the end of the season. Apparently, the A.J. Brown performance was enough. It is interesting. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before, though. That, it's because, I just wonder what the conversation must have been in the room when the general manager went to the owner and said, all right, I think we should trade A.J. Brown. He probably had to convince him. And the owner was probably like, all right, well, just don't let this come back and haunt us.
Well, it did come back and haunt them. It did. But,
that's why he got fired.
There were reasons behind that trade, though. A.J. Brown was in a contract year. They weren't going to re-sign him. So they got draft picks, okay? That's number 1. They didn't get enough for him, obviously, and he ends up being the type of player that he is, and he ends up kicking them in the butt in this rematch here, in this contest. So some controversy in the game, but more so in this particular game is whether or not Trevor Lawrence is going to play in this football game. If he doesn't take the field for Jacksonville, I want no pieces of Jaguars here. He's on the come right now, Trevor Lawrence. He's improving every game that he goes out. He's getting a little bit better and a little bit better, a little more confident in his game here. I got to say that I got to check the wire to make sure that he's going to be in this contest if I'm going to make a play in the game.
Well, Tennessee, by the way, has won and covered the last 5 games this year as a favorite. Now, before that streak, I don't think I would. No way I would have believed that. because they had such a bad job over the last few years of covering games, especially as a home favorite lately. They've also beaten Jacksonville 5 straight times by a 163-79 margin, and they've covered 8 straight games off back-to-back straight-up losses when they take on teams with a winning percentage of 333 or greater. So I like Tennessee in the game as a 4-point favorite, but like you said, definitely that's from what I've heard, he's going to play, but you're obviously right. You don't want to take Jacksonville if they're not going to have their quarterback in. Dallas is now up to, I believe, an 18-point favorite. So Dallas has covered 10 straight as a favorite of more than 3 off a straight-up win when they take on opponents with a 3.33 or less winning percentage, and they're 1-0 in that spot this year when they beat Detroit. I would take Dallas. I took Dallas last week against the Colts at 10.5, and I'm taking them again this week at 18.
Well, 18's out of my out of my comfort zone. Okay,
yeah, I know this ain't college.
I could never do that in the National Football League, but I also can't make a case for the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
They played a Cleveland Browns team that couldn't get in the end zone and still couldn't win the football game last week.
Eagles are 1-4 on the road against the spread. Giants are 7-1 as dogs. So I'm taking the Giants in the 7.
I like the Giants pretty well in this football game here. You got Philadelphia, I think, in a natural letdown type spot. I realize it's the Giants. I realize it's a division football game. But you've got pretty nice stats here. The Giants played that tie last week, and we broke this down in our database and looked at teams that play to a tie. And the next game, they come back to the next game. If they're not favored by 3 or more points, they're 9-2 straight up and against the spread.
Okay, even better.
Nice little number here to take against Philadelphia. And what have you got here? You got a winning team taking 7 at home in a division game in the second half of the football season. That's an automatic.
By the way, the Giants have a tough stretch to end their season. Philly twice. They got to go to Washington, and they have to go to Minnesota. Those are 4 of their last 5 games. So it's going to be, and again, that's why we said maybe Detroit still has a shot because they've got the tiebreaker on the Giants.
Yep.
So keep an eye on that. Detroit, they're a favorite over Minnesota. Now this was strange to me. I mean, so strange. It reminded me of the Dallas-Minnesota line when Dallas was the favorite, and then Dallas killed Minnesota. That's why I'm taking Detroit, because I'm like, all right, okay, if you want to go ahead and favor Detroit by 2, I'll take Detroit. I'll listen to you. I'll take them.
One of my good friends is a guy named Howard Eskin. He's a real popular broadcaster in Philadelphia. And he's the guy that everybody in Philly loves to hate. He's been there for like 40 years. I've been doing his radio show with him for 40 years, okay? And whenever I talk with him every week, the first thing he'll tell me is that line's telling me something. That line.
Right.
I haven't had my call with him yet this week, but I'm sure that's what I'm going to hear. That line's telling me something.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
It does look awful fishy. I got to say that. And you break down Minnesota here. This football team is really, really going backwards in the stats. My goodness, I think they like second to last worst team in total team defense in the National Football League now. And I think it's been disguised just given the fact that they've won these games, but they've won so many games by 1-score margins. They're getting away with it. So I think the odds makers see that, and they also see a Detroit team that's got a hot hand here right now, looking to stay alive mathematically for the playoffs. Hence, they bring in the small favorite in the contest here. But push comes to shove, I think the wrong team is favored.
I really wasn't high on the money line plays this week, but I just decided because Denver came through for me last week as a 3-star pick as a 9-point dog at Baltimore, that I'm just going to go ahead and go crazy and say that maybe this is their season, that they can at least get something out of this season as a 3.5 on the money line. I know they've lost 13 straight to Kansas City. But again, if anything, I still think the 9 is a solid play because I talked about all the close losses, and Kansas City is only 4-8 against the spread this year and 1-4 in their last 5. So I like the spread. But like I said, maybe Denver maybe they get to throw them a bone. Maybe they give them something. Give their fans something to be happy about.
Well, we know Wilson's struggling. Okay, he's lost 13 of his last 20 starts. Look inside those numbers and those starts, Greg. he was a dog in those games 10 times, and he only lost the spread 3 times. So he's cashed as a dog, even though he's playing poorly. Now they're going to put him up against a division rival who was up for their biggest play of the year last week against Cincinnati.
Yeah, good
Double
point.
revenge
Yeah.
in that football game. I think it's going to be very difficult for Andy Reid to get his team up here because, number one, difficult from Cincinnati, and number two, getting them to come up after looking down at the level of where Denver is here this week. I think Denver is an excellent play in this football game, and like you said, sprinkle a little bit on the money line. Why not?
Battle of former New York Jet quarterbacks: Sam Darnold in Carolina against Geno Smith in Seattle. That should be a good one. Seattle's about
Glad you call that out. I would never remember that. That's a good call there.
Seattle's a 3.5-point favorite. I can't touch this game because Carolina's covered 5 out of 6, and Seattle is 0-3 against the spread in their last 3. So I'm staying away from that one, especially with the running back situation with Seattle. Looks really bad. Looks like everybody's hurt.
Well, look what we did in the newsletter here. We call out a coach stat in this football game, and it's about as good as any coaching stat gets, and it's Pete Carroll. In his career, when he's coming off back-to-back spread losses, Pete Carroll in his career, and he's at home, he's 15-0 straight up and 14-1 to the spread. That's the role he'll dress up here against this Carolina football team this particular week.
Well, he ruined last week's spread, so he's got one more to go. Because remember, he lost back-to-back going into last week's game.
Was he at home?
No, that's what I'm saying. But there was I think he was 12-2 after back-to-back losses.
But now put him at home.
But now he's at home. So he lost that one. He screwed that one up. So hopefully he'll stay with this one being at home. Which at 3.5, that is a low number. I would take Seattle if I was taking the game. I mean, I'd be surprised if they lost this game.
This is the other game that the odds maker, my buddy would say this line's telling me something.
Yeah, that's kind of low. Yeah.
Seattle's, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Seattle's got a Thursday game on deck.
Yeah, against San Francisco.
There you go. So this could be a little bit of that look ahead past Carolina, and if it is, it could end up biting them. But I'm going to ride with Pete Carroll in this football game.
Tampa Bay, San Francisco. I wouldn't touch the Tampa Bay game this year. Forget it. No way. I have no idea what's going on with Tampa Bay from week to week. I mean, I don't know how they scored those last. Again, it's almost like at least they had Tom Brady, but they're like doing nothing until the last 4 minutes of the game, and then touchdown, and then they beat New Orleans and still look like the team that's going to backdoor their way into winning the NFC South. But now we got Brock Purdy and San Francisco. I've seen it all. If Brock Purdy, after a full week of preparation with a team, a good defense like Tampa Bay, goes up against Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy wins the game and doesn't do anything bad and shows like, hey, man, I'm Brock Purdy, then I've seen it all.
Well, the interesting subplot to this is Brock Purdy somewhere down the road will be telling his grandkids he remembers distinctly the first game he ever started in the National Football League, and he was favored against Tom Brady.
There you go.
And that's the case in this particular football game here. And normally I would be around a guy like that. They would rally around him in his first start, but I think they rallied around him last week.
Yeah.
When he came into the game.
They got that out of their system.
I also heard an interesting story about Brock Purdy here, and he was Mr. Irrelevant, the last player in the National Football League draft this year. And the reason San Francisco took him with that last pick is Kyle Shanahan really liked him as a quarterback, and he knew that if he didn't take him, that he would be gobbled up immediately.
Yeah, he would be signed out somewhere else. Yeah,
absolutely. He would have probably been the number one player that they would have all gone after here. So it ends up being, in retrospect, a pretty good move by Shanahan to make him Mr. Irrelevant.
Well, hey, look, if he does play well, then again, it's nice. The stories are great when it happens like that, and I liked them. We all liked them as a college quarterback because that's when Iowa State was a good football team when he was quarterback there for all 4 seasons and part of Matt Campbell's rise. But you just watched him play sometimes, especially last year, and I was going, what is he doing? Why is he not playing? I thought he would elevate his game better. So when I saw him play last year, I was really, because we were all disappointed in how Iowa State played last year. Remember, we thought they were going to win the championship.
Right, exactly. He had better years in his sophomore and junior years.
And that's why I was like, I don't think this guy doesn't really have it. And that's why when he was drafted, I was like, why are they drafting Brock Purdy? He can't even play college anymore. He didn't even but it just shows you, especially if you're being taught by the right people or if you're in the right system, there's a lot of different variables that go into it. And look, it's only one game, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. We have two more games to go. They're both prime time. Before we do that, quick break. I'm gonna do my fantasy break with Matt Shaw for Draft Sharks. A lot of injury talk, a little bit of fantasy. Back in just a few. Don't forget marker on the bottom. So if you don't want to, if you want to just fast forward through that, you'll know exactly where to pick things up again. So we'll be back right after that. All right, let's talk about. Let's go through because there's a game tonight. Hopefully, this will be available before the game starts. But Vegas and Rams, and so we've got this whole quarterback deal. John Wolford looks like it's a game time decision. I cannot believe Baker Mayfield might start for the Rams tonight. And then Josh Jacobs is the big news for Vegas. It looks like he's going to play.
Yeah.
That guy has just been a workhorse. I mean, he has. Is his contract run out this year?
Yep. Yeah, because one of the big things about him was that they decided not to exercise the fifth-year option, which a lot of people said, oh, see, Josh McDaniels doesn't like him. But then I was like, nah, it doesn't say that. It says he doesn't want to pay a running back $8 million guaranteed next year. It doesn't necessarily say he doesn't like him this year.
That's true. And then even if they want to resign him, look, if another team wants to come around and give him some ridiculous contract, then I'm sure they're just, all right, go ahead. I mean, we like you, but not that much.
Yep.
So, all right. How about Lamar Jackson? How long is he out for?
He seems like at least out this week, and then we'll see about next week. Certainly, John Harbaugh, the way he talks about it, sounds pessimistic. So we'll see. Tyler Huntley has been fine. He can run. He's not going to throw a whole lot. And Lamar Jackson has not been that good a fantasy quarterback for weeks now. So Tyler Huntley is like a if you really need somebody option, but I would try to lean away from that Baltimore offense as much as possible.
I can't believe, maybe I do, but how Denver lost that game. I mean, you give up 3 points for like 50 minutes, and then you allow like a 95-yard drive, and until like 2 minutes left. I mean, it is so typical of Denver season how they lost that football game, because now they've had 3 overtime losses and 2 losses by 1 point. Now, nobody's crying for Hackett because of the job he's done, but he does have at least there is a point where you go, okay, sort of like what we're seeing with the Raiders. Okay, we'll see what happens next year. Maybe those close losses turn into wins, or maybe they win one game next year. But that's just as a fan. Imagine going through that as a fan. You're going through a season like that.
If Nathaniel Hackett were arrested tomorrow on point shaving charges, I think all of us would be like, oh, now it makes sense.
Yeah, right. Somebody put a whole lot of money on the Broncos money line, and
yeah.
he couldn't do that. Najee Harris, he's going to play, right?
Yeah, my guess is that he's just managing that oblique injury, because last week he missed practice Wednesday, missed it Thursday, and then Friday he's back to full, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And then he played his usual role in that game.
Mixon coming back for the Bengals.
Yep, had a full practice Wednesday, so he's back from his concussion. Samaje Perine was good the past 2 games, and there's a lot of, maybe he played well enough to take some away from Joe Mixon. They've had Samaje Perine there for 3 years now, 4 years, I think. I think he arrived during the year before that. So they know what Samaje Perine is. He's a good fill-in. He's not Joe Mixon.
Yeah, if anything, who knows I don't know what his contract status is like, but it only takes another GM somewhere to say, he can become a starter on my team. And the Bengals will go, okay, see ya. Let's see. What's going on with the Browns? They have any key injury news? I know Njoku, just when Njoku's just a really strange player to follow, because it just always seems like he's like this, just get this up and down, and it's usually an injury. Whenever it's like he's ready to turn the corner, there's a little nick and bruise, and he's out a couple of weeks, and the quarterbacks suck. But is he coming back, Njoku?
It looks like there's a chance this week. Limited practice this week, dealing with the knee that kept him out last week. Of course, had just returned from the knee issue before that. So I think if he's back, he's probably startable for a lot of fantasy teams this week, because tight end is so bad. And he's been pretty good when healthy this year. Like I know what you're saying. it's been very inconsistent through the first, what was it, 4 years of his career.
True.
And then he hits the open market and we're like, okay, it's time for Cleveland to let him go. And they're like, no, we need to keep him.
Yeah, I was surprised about that. Yeah.
So yeah, it tells us that the talent's there. It's hard to, it's easy to forget that he came into the league very young. He was 20 when he entered the league. So, I think there's still plenty of time for him to have a nice career, but it'd be nice for now if we could get him healthy.
Now he's got a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be all the difference in the world.
Good.
Having Deshaun Watson a quarterback. So we'll see what happens there. Michael Carter's back for the Jets. So that's going to make things very difficult for anybody that has Michael Carter on one team and Bam Knight on the other.
Yeah, and if you have both of them, it's going to be a really tough call. Robert Saleh said, of course, Bam Knight's not going away, and I don't think any of us would have expected that, but he's going to be sharing that backfield with Michael Carter. We've only seen them together once. Michael Carter left that game shortly after halftime. Before that, going into halftime, Michael Carter led Knight by 1 carry and 1 target. So I think that we should go in expecting an even split, both rushing and receiving, because I think they're both capable of doing each of those things. And I think it's a little bit easier if you're not sure if you're weighing them against somebody close. It's a little bit easier to not play them in a game where they're 9.5-point dogs on the road against Buffalo. Buffalo's been an okay matchup for running backs. If the Jets do get going well, if they keep it close like they did in the first game, which they won, of course, then it could be a sneaky, decent spot for running backs. So I'm not saying don't use them, but go in expecting them to split, and you have to weigh them against who you have otherwise on your roster.
Well, and the weather conditions in Buffalo. Keep an eye on that, because I saw a couple of days ago precipitation until Saturday cleared up 40 degrees Sunday, and 40 degrees or 45, whatever, at Buffalo, you take it if there's no precipitation.
40 degrees I'm in Rochester, so 40 degrees in December up here is summer.
Is that what they're saying, by the way, for Sunday? Yeah.
We wear swimsuits. I haven't checked.
Oh, you haven't checked. Okay.
I usually check weather like Friday afternoon, Saturday morning. I haven't heard anything about it being
an issue,
a negative factor.
Okay. Yeah, because you would think more passing for both teams, but if there is a weather issue, then maybe that comes into fact. By the way, Bam Knight's done a good job, but sorry, as a Jet fan, if Breece Hall was still playing, Jets scored a touchdown on one of those 2 drives.
Oh, yeah. It's also worth noting, too, for all the Jets, because they've had 2 big offensive games. It's worth noting they played the Bears and the Vikings.
Yes.
The worst defense.
You don't have to do that on this channel. I have to be the most outspoken realist when it comes to Mike White so far.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's just driving me crazy hearing, especially the writers, because they should know better. But I think they're just stirring up trouble. That's all. And they know it. They're stirring up trouble with the first-round draft pick, and they're trying to, hey, Mike White's good, man. Hey, Mike White. Yeah, he had a 59 rating in the game against like the worst defense in past year. That's really good, man. Yeah. All right, let's see. I know nobody cares too much about Houston, but Davis Mills comes back. And no Cooks and Collins possibly even, right? Because Collins is a borderline if you need a receiver, maybe.
Yeah, if he were healthy, he would be in like the low wide receiver 3, maybe wide receiver 4 mix. But apparently he didn't practice Thursday in addition to missing Wednesday. So I would count him as not in my lineup consideration right now unless I'm in a deep league. And really, the fantasy impact here is the offense looks so bad that I would try not to use Dameon Pierce because it's hard to imagine Houston getting anything going this week. And we saw, like, last week he was okay against Cleveland, which has been terrible against the run. The 2 weeks before that, he harmed our fantasy teams. It wasn't just letting us down, but he was below 30 total yards in those 2 games. So the offense is so bad that it's keeping Dameon Pierce from being anything for us.
Well, we know Houston will be drafting a quarterback next year. Yeah. That's as given as a move that there is going to be in the draft next year. Detroit. What about Detroit? If you had to pick Swift's still their number 1 guy, or is it St. Brown?
Well, he stepped back in as the number 1 running back last week, which indicated that he was healthy. And then on this Wednesday, he popped up as limited with the ankle, which has been an issue previously. So that's particularly noteworthy because the week before he was finally off the injury report completely, I think for the first time since back in week 2. And then we saw the workload pick up. We've heard Dan Campbell talk a bunch of times about trying to protect him Swift being angry he wasn't getting the ball more, but coaches trying to make sure that he's healthy for the long term. So now, is this a matter of resting him on Wednesday to keep managing him? Is it like the extra work maybe took a little bit of a toll on the ankle where he'll still play, but he'll see less? So we're going to really have to watch this one, both the participation Thursday and Friday and any words from the coaches. So there's a little bit of risk. I would probably have Swift somewhere around like RB20 with certainly plenty of upside if he is, closer to healthy than that says.
I know, even though the rest of this show that we do here that you're on is a handicapping show, your fantasy segment, but are you what makes Detroit offensively a 2-point favorite against Minnesota? Is it the fact that Minnesota has that really bad pass defense?
I think it's because they've been doing everything well lately. I was looking at Football Outsiders DVOA over the past 5 weeks, and the Lions are 9th in pass offense. They're number 3 in pass defense. They, of course, have been running the ball well throughout the season, regardless of whether Swift or Jamal Williams is in there. Jared Goff is playing well right now. So I think it's just that. And Minnesota, like kind of all along, everybody's been like, yeah, their record's great, but are they really that good?
It's sort of like they're the Tennessee of the NFC.
Right. The answer is they're really not that good. They're certainly getting it done, but they're not that good. And Detroit is 4-1 over the past 5. They're playing well on both sides. So I've been surprised at the line, but when you look at it and you look at what's going on lately, it makes sense.
Let's see. Who do they beat? They beat Green Bay stinks, Chicago stinks, the Giants are overrated, and Jacksonville stinks. That's the thing, is that, and the only team they lost to is the Bills, but they almost beat them. So I think that was to tell you the truth, the Bills' loss was more impressive than the other 4 wins.
And even before that, they barely lost to the Dolphins. So, they always say you can only play who's in front of you. They blasted the Giants. They blasted the Jaguars. So that's the other thing, is it's not like they've been squeaking by these crappy teams. They're, beating up teams that were crappy among the past 3. And I guess it's probably not fair to call the Giants crappy at this point, although it's fun as an Eagles fan.
And it's Thursday, so we'll see. But also, not that I'm a Giants fan, Dan Campbell, just like we were saying with Hackett, but Campbell has more respect. And that is that, look, it's the NFL. And I think fans, not that they're going to, but they have to relax. The off season, the preseason, the limited practices, it's just taking teams, free agency, a whole lot longer before you know what you have. And just look at Detroit. I thought it was ridiculous when both Josh McDaniels and Dan Campbell had to be given vote of confidence, at barely at mid-season. And Campbell's in his second season on a really bad team, and they're trying to build something there. And McDaniels, he's in there for barely half a season. It's like, you got to be patient with these guys. And now you're seeing that the Raiders are playing more respectable, and so are the Lions. So, hey, if the Lions had gotten off to a better start, they could be in playoff contention in the NFC.
They could. Maybe they're not completely out of it yet. 5-7. We got 5 left to go. It's a team that's not hard to root for.
And like you said, they did beat the Giants. Mm-hmm. So they have a little bit of a tiebreaker there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, could be interesting. Okay. Denver. We spoke about Denver. Judy and Sutton. No good.
No Sutton this week. Judy will be playing. I mean, it's not an exciting situation, but the target outlook for Jerry Jeudy should be pretty good.
Okay. Not that it has seemed to matter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what is, when you watch Denver, what is it? I know they talk about, Wilson and he's a prima donna and he's doing this wrong and he's doing that wrong. But what is it about Denver that you say, and again, you can blame Hackett, that you notice right away? Is it talent? Is it coaching? What is it?
I think they have enough talent. I have to think that it's primarily coaching with them. I'm not a film grinder, and I'm certainly not watching Denver every week. So it's tough for me to go X's and O's on exactly what's wrong. But when you watch them, there's nothing that looks good is the biggest thing. There are plenty of teams where you're like, oh, they were really close there. But a really close game for Denver this season has been a 10-9 loss or an 11-10 win. I mean, they're barely
ugly loss. Yeah, they have a lot of ugly losses.
Yeah, the defense was really good at the beginning of the season. Even that has fallen off. They traded away Bradley Chubb, who was a key piece there. So I just think it's a mix of everything. The play calls are questionable. Russell Wilson's decisions are questionable. They have had some injuries mixed in, which doesn't help. But you can't blame too much on that. So that's one situation. I'm usually patient for a football fan. I'm like, come on, guys, it's 1 year. We got to give this guy a chance. I don't think there's any reason. I think they should dump Nathaniel Hackett because there's absolutely no point for optimism there right now.
Hey, sometimes that's the case. Head coaches do get fired after one season when they actually see the results, or they actually just see what's going on. They talk to the guy during the season. They see how he handles things. And especially for a new guy, because you don't really know how he's going to react under those circumstances. So maybe it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, this guy's just way over his head.
Yeah, and it stinks to get there and not have it work out, but there's really nothing wrong with if you just top out as an NFL coordinator. That's a pretty good coaching career. Just not cut out to be a head coach. That's fine.
A lot of those guys, that's for sure. All right, Carolina, Donta Foreman going to play?
I don't know. I haven't seen what his status is for today yet. Apparently, he says he's 95%. I don't think that we're really generally talking about true medical percentages when players are given them, but that's encouraging, and it's worth noting because Seattle has been really bad against the run. They had a little stretch where they got better on defense, and then they got back to bad again. So I think it's a good matchup for whoever's in that Carolina backfield, and I think there's plenty of upside to Foreman if he's ready.
Now, I had the joy of having the Seattle running back situation on my team this year. So first I had Penny, but then I drafted Walker just in case. So I figured I did the smart thing, and I did, and that worked for a little bit. So now Walker, but you know what I did? As soon as Penny got hurt, I picked up DJ. I said, all right, now I gotta have a backup just in case. I thought that was the right thing. So what happens when Walker gets hurt and DJ comes in and plays? DJ gets hurt. So I've had DJ on my team as a backup doing nothing for, 6 weeks, just when it's going to become a valuable, hey, I hung in there with you, and then it looks like DJ's not playing this week. Doesn't even look like his injury is a lot worse, it looks like, than Walker, who still may play this week.
Yeah, there's that patience working against you, right? That we were talking about earlier. So, yeah, it does. Walker, it seems like we should expect him not to play, but he hasn't been ruled out. DJ Dallas, certainly not trending toward playing. That leaves Travis Homer, who also started the week limited. I would really try not to play anybody beyond Kenneth Walker in this backfield. The other guys have proven in previous tries that they're really not very good. And we've seen lately that Seattle is okay with leaning toward the pass. I mean, Geno Smith's playing great. The wide receivers are good. So I would hope that there are better options, but certainly if needed, it looks like Travis Homer is currently the bet for lead touches in the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, you could see that. Tony Jones, they might go with it and still just keep Tony Jones like in his little third down role and let Tony Jones be the supposed number one guy. But overall touches, maybe Tomer gets probably more, especially because of the passing game.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is we don't know what it's going to look like. We can guess at who it's going to be, but we haven't seen it yet. So it would only be a guess. It's late in the season to be guessing. We have Travis Homer currently projected as the top Seattle running back. He's like 29th in our running back rankings right now, and that's in a week where 6 teams are on bye. So yeah, that's really a break glass in case of emergency for a running back territory.
Speaking of running backs, Fournette and White. Now, I drafted White, and I've been very patient with him, just like we talked about the entire season, and had my opportunity, and that's been working out the last few weeks with Fournette out. So Fournette gets back into action last week. White scores the late touchdown. But the healthier Fournette gets, how do you think that's going to change what's going on in the backfield?
I think it's going to keep looking like it did against New Orleans. I was wondering if we were going to get Fournette coming in a little behind Rachaad White, because if we remember the last time that Fournette was healthy, Rachaad White started a game for the first time. That was that game against Seattle in Germany. We did have White start. Then they were kind of working evenly after that, and then Fournette left with the hip injury. So we had Fournette come back. He was working just ahead of White, although it was still pretty close to a split. We still got lots of targets for both guys against New Orleans. We ended up with 10-9 in carries. 8-7 in White's favor in targets. So I think that's what it's going to be, because then it increases the chances that both of those guys stay healthy, and they're both talented. It's not like they're just putting some dude on the field to help keep Leonard Fournette healthy. Like Rachaad White, they even talked about, we've always liked the talent. We're hoping that he was going to be ready to take on more. Looks like he's ready to take on more now.
And this is just a bad week matchup, though, because they're taking on the Niners. That's the main issue. Speaking of the Niners, Brock Purdy. We just talked about NFL playoffs, so this is the guy you have to pick up if you're thinking about the playoffs, because he's going to be starting playoff games for the Niners.
Plus, then you get to say the name Brock Purdy over and over again.
Oh my Lord!
That sounds like the name of a made-up quarterback from a movie.
It's crazy.
TV series.
Tua, there's a made-up name. He's going to be okay.
It seems like it. I think we should expect him to play in this game. We'll see if that ankle played any role in his disappointing outing last time, but that was one game, so he should be better off against these Chargers, especially if Jalen Waddle is also healthy enough.
Yeah, and Waddle and Mike Williams for the Chargers. What do you think?
We got limited practices for both of them on Wednesday. Waddle's closer to playing because the early word was that he should be okay to play in this game. So it'll be watching to make sure he's ready. With Mike Williams, it's going to be watching to see if he's ready. He already returned from that high ankle sprain once, and then 6 plays in, he tweaked it, even though he said coming into the game he felt 200%. So we're going to have to watch him closely this week. And if you can, like if it's close between him and somebody else, I'd probably lean toward the somebody else.
You see, when a player, you make a mistake like that, and you've thrown out any future, guesses by the coaching staff about whether or not you're okay, because then they're not going to believe you anymore.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's possible. I haven't read specifics, but it's certainly possible that his ankle was good, and then he just
it's the same ankle though.
Yeah,
I mean, come on, let's be real. Come on, it's possible. Yes,
yeah,
it's
just saying.
Possible.
It's possible.
We're just saying.
Is it more likely that it was still weak? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. But any coach that's listening to a player's own assessment of his injury and treating that as a key factor in deciding whether he'll play
that's
is
a problem.
Doing it wrong in the first place.
Yeah, it's true. So, but you know what? Now they don't have much room for error. So
that's right.
They got to get him in there. All right, sounds good, Matt. And what you got going on at Draft Sharks? What are you guys talking about? You still doing a couple shows a week?
Oh, yeah. Still hitting Monday, Thursday, Friday shows. We got DFS. We're talking redraft. I got my free pick'ems for underdog play up in a free article on draftsharks.com yesterday. We're still trying to get everybody into the playoffs and then trying to help everybody win their championships.
That would be nice. How many teams do you still have in a running for a championship out of your how many teams?
That's not a number I have off the top of my head.
Oh,
there's the redraft and there's the best ball portfolio. So at this point, I kind of wait until the end and then I count it up.
Good going. It's definitely a lot. You're on the other end of the spectrum. I got one team, so we'll have to remedy that next season.
That's right.
Matt, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Greg, thanks for having me again.
You got it. All right, we're back to talk about those primetime games, Miami and the Chargers, Sunday Night Football. These happen to be my 2 top games of the weekend, both of them on primetime, the 2 last games of the weekend. I like the Dolphins. They're a 3-point favorite at the Chargers. I don't know, losing back-to-back, it's going to be tough for me to see that. I like the way the Dolphins have played this year, obviously. First loss for Tua, so now all of a sudden to lose back-to-back. I don't know. Chargers have not been impressive. They lost to the Raiders when you're not supposed to lose to the Raiders. So I just don't like what's going on with the Chargers right now. They might be actually looking for a new head coach if they don't make the playoffs this season.
Well, you talked about Tua and what a nice year he had. A pretty disappointing game last week, to say the least. Now he gets a chance to bounce back here. And one nice number in our database about him is that he's fared really well. He's 21-10 in his 31 starts in the National Football League. But when he's gone up against 500 or fewer opponents that don't have a winning record, he's 16-4 in those games.
Even better.
And he's won 11 of them in a row. Okay. And I like the fact that they decided to stay out west.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah,
to get ready for this particular football game. A little bit embarrassed they were last week. What I don't like is the fact that they dressed him up as a favorite here. I really thought this game would be pick'em.
Sure.
But again, it's not our job to second guess the odds maker. They know what they're doing here. So I'm going to say Yeah, Asmaker knows what he's doing, and I happen to like Miami, so no reason to back off of that.
Both teams have different schedules. Miami, a tough last five. After this, they're at Buffalo. Then they're also going to play at New England, hosting the Jets, and their easiest game is the Packers, which is not a gimme. But the Chargers have an easy last three. After they host Tennessee next week, they play the Colts, the Rams, and the Broncos. And that's huge because right now they're a game back of the playoffs. They're tied with the Patriots behind the Jets. And if the Jets lose to the Bills like they're supposed to, based on a 10-point line, Chargers could tie the Jets with a win this week. And the Patriots could do the same. They're a 6-6 team at Arizona. This is my top play of the week. I'm taking the Patriots. They're only a 2-point favorite. I just can't see the Patriots losing 3 in a row at this time of year. If you look at it, when they play the good teams, they've usually lost this season. But when they played the bad teams, they've usually won. They're 5-1 straight up as a favorite this year. Their only loss was that home primetime embarrassment to the Bears. Other than that, when they're in the spot against inferior opponents this season, they're able to handle business. Also, Arizona 0-4 straight up as a home dog this year.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting number, Arizona, because Kingsbury is basically pretty good as a dog. He hasn't done that at home thus far this football season here. But I'm going to give you a number that was in this week's Playbook Football newsletter that comes to support of the New England Patriots. It's all about Bill Belichick and how good he is. In his career, he's really rather dominated the opposite conference teams out of the NFC. He's really feasted against them. But if you take a look at them in his career, when they are coming off a loss, and he takes on this division, this NFC West, those teams are off a loss. Belichick's been there 13 times. He's won all 13 games and 12-1 to the spread in those particular contests.
Even better.
Yes, it is.
5-star Patriots.
There you go.
All right, Mark. So, Playbook experts, you're going to have, again, we're recording this on Thursday, so I would feel pretty confident that by the time this show is available to our audience, they'll be able to click on over to Playbook Experts and check out your free plays this week. Do we know the games of the free plays?
Of the games that were on our
that you're going to do.
That I'm going to do on the
today. Once we're done with this show and we record your free plays, do we know what games are going to be?
Well, I'm gonna do one NFL free play and talk a little bit about the card. But that one particular football game I'm gonna talk about is going to be Buffalo and the New York Jets that we talked about.
So you're talking about the Bills and the Jets, and then you're going to do a college one as well,
well, there's no college Army Navy plays. I'll talk a little bit about what I would do with that one game. And by the way, that's the most popularly watched football game all season long.
Really? Is that because it's the only game on?
It's because it's the only game.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. All right, Mark, appreciate it as always. Next week, we start previewing the bowl season and also get into NFL Week 15. So appreciate your time, Mark. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, my pleasure as always, Greg. Be well, stay safe, and I'll catch you next week.